Well, good morning, church. Welcome back for another podcast-style interview that we have been doing. This is week number 3, and we have somebody that I have known for a very long time, almost as long as I've been alive. We have Reverend George Batten, the executive director of the Union Mission, West Virginia Rescue Ministries in Fairmont, West Virginia. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, Jeremy?
Oh, pretty good. Fair to middling.
You know him? Some days.
Well, we're gonna jump right into to maybe one of the heavier questions that I have. I remember a long time when you started working at the mission, you said to me, "We have to give the homeless their dignity." And I thought maybe it would be helpful to tell people what that actually means. I mean, I know what it means to me, but what does it mean to give the homeless their dignity?
Well, let me tell you a story. Fellow I work with took an art appreciation class in college, and they studied all these artists, some of the biggest names that you can imagine, in the art world. And at the end of the class, of the art that they had observed, they were asked which one impacted you the most. And his answer was this, that in a cave they had found a handprint in a red pigment. And he wrote his paper on the impact of that, meaning that there was somebody looking for significance, looking for some acknowledgement, some way of making an impression on the rest of the world that they had lived.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So to give dignity is to actually acknowledge the individual as an individual, give them some self-worth.
Amen. And sometimes it's so hard because we think we don't always humanize homelessness. We see it as a problem, not actual human beings. A problem that needs to be fixed as opposed to actual human beings. Is that true?
Well, homelessness cannot exist without people.
Right.
And it is interesting that we judge people we don't know many times as homeless. Mm-hmm. And when I hear somebody say they were homeless, my question is, how do you know? How do you know that they were homeless? Did you ask them? Did you talk to them? Did you acknowledge them? Rather than walk by them with your nose in the air like your feet stink. You need to acknowledge them. Mm-hmm. That gives an individual self-worth.
Excellent. Well, we're off to a great start, Larry. I'm going to pivot over to you.
Sure. So glad you're here, George, and so glad that during this season we've found ways to partner even more so. But before, I want to follow up a little bit on what Jeremy said, and even before we started doing the partnering with Feeding with the Lunch program and things, I'd been coming over the fourth Tuesday of the month to share a message in that time of chapel. And one of the things that, as you've said, that is humanized for me is seeing those faces, not only on chapel night, but when I'm out in the community. And it might have been faces that I confess that I might have driven past many of times before I was doing that and not put a face and a name sometimes even. And what's even more interesting is there have been times like maybe I've been in a place of business or something in town, and one of the residents has called me by name. And so talking about humanizing, and that's so important, I think, for us, if we really want to say doing ministry with, it's not ministry to, it's ministry with people, whether they're homeless or not.
Absolutely.
So during this season, as we've transitioned, our staff back in March, when all of this kind of hit the fan, we were trying to figure out how could we redeem this time as the church. And I was really glad at the staff meeting it came up that, why don't we call you and check with you, what is your need? Can you tell a bit about that story about I just gave you a phone call and said, what can we do? Because we were feeling a little helpless.
Well, and we were feeling a little lonely, struggling with all of the things that go with serving meals takeout, the styrofoam, the preparation. It's like preparing two meals, because you're serving the ones that are isolated on the inside, a regular meal, and then you're trying to serve that again to the outside, and they can't come in, they can't find shelter from the heat and all of that. And so I was feeling kind of lonely that day. Felt like this battle was on my shoulders and not being shared when you called. And I do remember just one thing, and it was the emotion and brokenness when you said we could do that. We could bring meal. And then you called and said, can we do it 2 meals? I said, absolutely. If one is good, 2 is better.
That's right.
And we've been plugging every Sunday water bottles. Are we still in need of water bottles?
Well, what he really isn't quite aware of what all is needed. Oftentimes the donation is what we put together for the lunch. What we are in need of right now are, we always will need bottled water, but also what we need are potato chips and homemade baked cookies. We need baked cookies and potato chips, individual bags of those.
Excellent.
Well, the summer, the water was essential. That's one thing that people miss, is that with the library closed and all of the places closed, they had nowhere to go to get water. So when you were giving out water bottles to them, and it made quite an impact. And I got to tell you, sometimes they'd take 2 rather than 1.
Sure.
One of the things that, I don't want to say, I know that your ministry needs money. Every ministry needs money. So I don't want to say, stop giving. Please continue to give. But what are things that we could do? What are things that the community of Fairmont could do? Not just our church, but like all of the community of Fairmont could do, other than just throwing money at the problem?
Well, that's interesting, because with that question, there is a prejudice that actually everybody wants to find another way than to give money. And so if we don't give money, the ministry is not going to be there for us to do something else with. And so money is an issue. But the things that we need are people who will come alongside of the homeless people, encourage them, kind of mentor them. I hate to use that word because it's such a byword, but they need to just model humanity to them, to let them see that the people that are in church are sometimes as hurting as those that are not in the church.
Yeah. And one of the ways that people can give money is coming up in October 16th, right?
18th.
October 18th. So October 18th, there's going to be a virtual kind of faith promise banquet type thing like you always used to have in the spring, where you would raise money. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, it's our virtual night of hope, and we're in hopes to bring some people along that don't normally attend the banquet. Because of the situation, obviously, we can't meet in person. We can't sit down at a table of 10 and have a great meal and a great night of fellowship. But
Right.
So we'll do everything but the meal. We'll have the stories and the talk and the introductions and all of that stuff. But we'll do it online or virtual, as people say.
So October 18th, mark your calendars. Also, I believe you can give through the website, right?
Yes, you've been able to give through the website. And let me just peg this, that any donation of $500 or more qualifies for a NIP tax credit. And so rather than take up all the time explaining it, if they're really interested in the NIP tax credit, give me a call and let me talk to them about it.
That's great.
Awesome.
One of the things that when I asked you about another need, and we were able to help provide that recently, were metal dressers. And so that's going to be able to help, I know, with families or individuals that are going to be able to give also, as Jeremy talked about, dignity, being able to have places to put their clothes.
That's absolutely correct. The issue with metal dressers is related to the outbreak of bed bugs. And so if you have wooden dressers and you spray for bed bugs, or you spray for anything, there is no residual on wood. It is absorbed. On the metal, there is the residual, and so it helps you keep all of that stuff in control. Now, people, I'm an expert on bed bugs. Bed bugs, people kind of think that it's got to do with dirt and all of that. Bed bugs have been found in five-star motels. It's not about cleanliness. It's about, this is a non-flying mosquito. And that's all he is a non-flying mosquito. And that's what I'll leave it at for the...
Makes me kind of glad we can't really stay in hotels right now.
That's right. On this Sunday morning for the West Virginia Council of Churches, today is also called a Day of Hope. And I know that you're all about that in the programs that you have at the mission. And I wanted to know if you want to share a little bit about some of the programs. The Day of Hope, in particular with the Council Churches of West Virginia, is about addiction. And I know you have a program at the mission for that as well.
Well, I think to bring in the scripture, that to realization that we have hope as an anchor for the soul. And people without hope will do all kinds of things. But people with hope will grow. And when you're in addiction, it becomes a hopeless situation. It becomes a situation where you just don't know what to do and how to do it. So yes, we have an addiction recovery program as part of it. And the truth of the matter is, it's not just addiction. Every homeless person struggles with hope. How am I going to get out of the situation I'm in? Interesting fact is that in England they did a study and they found out that 38% of all the homeless had an addiction problem, some kind of chemical dependency. And then when they got to studying it further, they found out that 50% of that 38% were addicted before they became homeless, meaning that maybe the addiction had something to do with them becoming homeless. But the other 50% developed their addiction to deal with the shame, the heartache, the brokenness of homelessness.
Those are some staggering numbers. 50%. I did not know that. Wow. Well, I'm going to round the corner here because I have a bet with a friend that attends our church that I couldn't keep two pastors to under 20 minutes. But I think I'm going to win. Is there anything else you would like to say about West Virginia Rescue Ministries?
Well, there's a lot I'd like to say about West Virginia Rescue Ministries, but I'm just going to say this to you. The reason you kept two preachers to under 20 minutes is you didn't give them a Bible. The reality is...
Well, yeah. Sorry.
The reality is that we exist because of a community that cares. And if that community ever quits caring, the devastation will become apparent. Mm-hmm. The heartache will become Main Street. It won't be the back alley.
Yep. Amen. Well, since you brought up the Bible, my final question each and every week has been, what is one book other than the Bible that has had a significant impact on you? Maybe you've given it away, maybe you've read it more than once, maybe it's more than one book, but at least one book that has had significance.
Well, let me ask you a question, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Do you know me well enough to tell the listeners who my favorite author is?
I don't want to get it wrong, but I think if I were to guess, it would be Tozer?
A.W. Tozer.
A.W. Tozer?
My favorite book, if I have to whittle it down to one, would be A.W. Tozer's Echoes of Eden. And the reason that is because he portrays in that book the voice of God calling to man. And it revolves around when Adam and Eve had fallen in the garden. Here God was, the eternal voice of God, crying out in Eden and echoing through eternity was, Adam, where are you? And that goes back to the significance thing. If people can understand that the God of the universe, the God of creation, the God that made us all, cares enough to cry out through eternity, where are you? There would be a change, a permanent change in hearts and lives.
Wow. So you did get a sermon. There
He
you
did
go.
get to preaching, didn't he?
Hey, what is the website?
The website?
Yeah, and we'll have them put it up on the bottom here.
WVRM .org,
Okay.
WVRM.org.
And that's probably the best place to go to stay connected for people that aren't connected, or maybe, do you have a Facebook page as well, I believe?
Yes, we have a Facebook page. You can find us at just by searching for West Virginia Rescue Ministries. I'm trying to get into tweeting.
Nice. I'll have to follow you.
Yeah, well, it's just those things. But yeah, WVRM.org.
Awesome. Well, Larry, do you have anything else?
I'm just excited that that we already had a connection throughout the years with our church and the mission, and I'm just excited how that's grown during this season of pandemic when people have needed hope, and also a way that our church could rally around and offer hope.
Well, your church has been a resource for us, not only in doing the ministry, but men who would sit on our board. And that has been a big impact. Before we close today, I just got to say to you, Pastor Larry, thank you so much for coming alongside of us and being such an important part of the ministry.
It's our pleasure, and want you to know we are just as blessed because being able to see the work that is happening at the mission is a blessing to so many. And so I really hope everyone will tune in October 18th, 6 p.m. for the virtual Night of Hope, and then you'll be able to see for yourself the stories that are happening at the West Virginia Rescue Ministries.
The one thing we didn't mention was the cold shelter.
Go ahead.
Well, we're working towards getting a cold shelter open because the present situation stops us from taking people in, and so we've already raised $2,000 of what we thought was a $7,800 budget. We just got back from the hardware store and gave them the list of stuff that we need, and they came back with a $6,000 quote. Yeah. So that's exciting.
So you need $6,000 to make the cold shelter functional.
Well, no, we already got 2 out of the 6. We believe that we've got another 2,000 or 2,500. So we're down to $1,500 to $1,600 that we need to make the cold shelter functional.
Okay, cool, because I believe there are people watching that could just make that happen.
I
right
think
now.
so too. If
So-
we're not careful, we're going to have another sermon here, loaves and fish or something. I don't know.
And I'm gonna lose a bet. So I mean,
Well,
I'm just getting excited about seeing God working right here.
yeah, I have some stories to tell about what God has done in the midst of this COVID. Yeah. I mean, if you want to hear them, I'm ready to tell them.
well, we'll have to have you back for a part 2.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I'm just so glad you came to join us. And when I asked you if you knew this guy, you still came. So.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.
All right, friends, thanks for joining us, and may grace and peace be with you every step of the way.